All of these axial filter capacitors have been removed from the amplifier chassis. One thing I added were labels for all the different components within the radio. So I was just going through the radio, the power transformer, chokes, all of the output tubes labeled because I got each of these resistors and their values in the document that I'm making for the radio repair. More chokes, the output tubes, and the other power transformer. I was wondering what these two cans were for. They're on the line input, AC line input. Looking at the schematic here, those are the line capacitors and also some chokes coming in from the power supply. The top of the filter can has been secured to the main body of the can with PL Premium Construction Adhesive by Loctite. I won't be making a detailed video of how I stuff these last three caps because they're the same as the previous. This canned ohm resistor is intermittent, so I'm going to take it off and try crimping down the shield cover to see if that'll tighten up the terminals. They're making good contact. I've got my ohm meter, analog ohm meter, hooked up to the cat ohm resistor that's intermittent. Right now it's showing open. I'll go ahead and wiggle these terminals like this, and you can watch the needle jump around. So that's the one section. Now I'll switch it to the other section here. Let's see what this one does. I've tightened the connections to the terminals. Got my meter connected again. Haven't turned my meter on. Let's see if we get the proper reading. This should be 1,000 ohms. May not have my meter set right, but appears like that's working. Let's move it to the other section. This is supposed to read 1,800 ohms, 1857. It looks like it's pretty dead on. Let's try wiggling the terminals. Everything looks nice and stable. Let's put it back to the other terminal here. Let's see if that's stable. Yep, looks like it's fixed. The workbench is prepared to work on the amplifier chassis, install the filter capacitors, and other work. I laid down this towel to protect the amplifier chassis from getting scratches on the black paint. The first thing I want to do is to replace the two capacitors. They're in the AC line filter cans here. I've disconnected the leads going to the line filter, and this whole terminal strip is a mess. I'll have to unsolder all the wires and redo it. Same goes for the other input terminal here. I've unwound the leads to the AC line filter, and looking inside here, get under the light. I thought there would be paper capacitors for the line filter capacitors that are in here, but it looks like they're mica capacitors in Bakelite. But I'll go ahead and replace those anyway. I've removed the filters from the cans. Looking at the coil looks like it's number 12 wire, insulated with cloth. These capacitors, mica capacitors, solars, red, black, brown. They're supposed to be 0.002 microfarads or 2,000 microfarads or 2,000 picofarads. I'm reading this as 20, so 20. Brown's a multiplier of 10, so that'd be 200 picofarads or 200 microfarads. I'm going to remove this and measure the capacitance just to verify that it's a 0.002. Well, I won't have to measure these capacitors. I was right, this is 200 picofarad. Turned it over. They have the capacitance stamped on there, 0.0002 instead of 0.002 shown on the schematic. Both of these mica capacitors both show 0.0002. So I don't know if Zenith made a mistake or the schematic's wrong. Just not sure about this. I'm beginning to go through the chassis and clean up the solder joints and dress all the wires. I've installed a few wax cord lines to kind of dress all these wires, make them look a little neater. Here's an example of how messy the wires are in the radio. For me, with this being a stratosphere, these wires should be all dressed properly. And here's what I'm using here. Picked this up at Michael's, wax Brazilian cord. I guess as a joke you could say that this radio is getting the Brazilian wax. All the wires are bundled together with the wax cord. For me, it looks a lot neater than what Zenith did in the factory when they put these radios and amplifier chassis together. Might be a little bit of a shadow on this run. That's it. This is the phono power socket on the amplifier chassis, and I found a loose wire connection to the screw here when I was moving some wires around. So I'll go ahead and tighten that and mount the outlet back to the chassis. The line cord terminal has been cleaned of solder and cut wires in preparation for the line cord installation. The new disc capacitors have been glued to the old original mica capacitors for reinstallation onto the line filter coils that go in the amplifier chassis. The new cloth cover cord has been installed onto the plug, and a piece of heat shrink was added to keep the cloth of the cord from fraying. Also inside, the ends of the wires were soldered to keep them from fraying. The line filters have been resoldered onto the line coil, and those are both ready to install back into the filter can. The new capacitor glued to the underside of the original capacitor is a little bit too wide for the coil to fit back into the can. It's about a, I don't know, 1/4 inch too wide, so the mounting screws here won't go through the top of the can in the right location. So it looks like I'm going to have to remove the mica capacitors and just have the new cap on these. And it's hidden from view anyway since it's inside the can. The original mica cap was removed and the new cap soldered in place due to the original and the new caps not fitting into the cans here. The line filters have been installed back in the cans. On these ground lugs, I added some dielectric grease to make sure I have good contact with the amplifier chassis. The ground lug on the left wasn't making good contact with the chassis. It was loose. So washers were added on all 4 screws of the can to assure that we have good ground contact of the capacitor that's inside the filter can. Plugs on the speaker amplifier harness have been color coded with that on the tweeter where those wires connect. I've decided to replace the octal rectifier socket in the amplifier chassis with a 4-pin socket. got all the nuts, screws removed, wires unsoldered. Go ahead and remove the socket. Get the new socket in place here for bolting in. These wires moved out of the way. All set. The holes on a new socket don't quite line up with the original holes on the chassis, so I'll have to ream these out a little bit with the reaming tool here. Make them a little larger so that the screws line up going through the chassis. The 4-pin sockets have been installed for the 5Z3 rectifier tubes and the amplifier chassis. What I didn't like about the octal sockets for the 5U4 rectifiers that were used in place of the 5Z3 rectifiers were, of course, the different colors, black versus brown. But the other one is the black socket sat up higher than the other socket in the chassis. Just didn't like that.